My name is Olivia Carter. I am 47 years old. The moment my entire family was celebrating because they thought I was about to lose everything, I was sitting inside the mountain lodge they believed the bank was about to seize. Notification sounds kept ringing from my phone. Olivia looked at the screen. The family group chat. A new message from Ethan, her older brother, finally found the opportunity we've been waiting for. Olivia's mountain lodge is about to be auctioned off for unpaid taxes. The starting bid is only a fraction of its real value. We should buy it before outsiders get involved. Less than a minute later, Diane replied, "I'm putting money in." Then came Melissa. "Count me in too." Messages started pouring in. Renovation plans, rental plans, vacation plans. No one asked how Olivia was doing. No one asked whether she needed help. No one even questioned whether the information was true. What sent a chill through Olivia was not the greed. It was the speed. Everything happened far too quickly, as if they had been waiting for this day for a very long time. Outside the window, snow drifted slowly across the pine-covered hills. Inside the lodge, the fireplace burned steadily. This was where Olivia had lived for years, her workplace. The place where she designed sustainable architecture projects used across multiple states. The place where she had spent thousands of hours researching and creating, yet in her family's eyes, it was nothing more than proof of her failure. 6 years earlier, when Olivia left the largest architectural firm in Denver to start her own business, the entire family opposed her decision. They said she was destroying her future. They said she was too old to start over. They said a woman her age should be looking for stability instead of chasing unrealistic dreams. Meanwhile, Ethan was considered the pride of the family. He had a stable office job, a predictable life, the kind of choices that made everyone feel comfortable. Every time Ethan bought a new car, the family threw a celebration. Every time Ethan received a raise, everyone called to congratulate him. As for Olivia, she once won a national award for environmental design. Her mother simply said, "That sounds nice." Then, immediately changed the subject to Ethan's latest vacation. Olivia was once featured in a respected industry publication. Her father asked, "Does any of that actually make money?" Those comments no longer made Olivia angry. They only left her exhausted, like a light rain that never stopped. Not strong enough to drown anyone, but persistent enough to wear everything down. There were many evenings after family dinners when Olivia drove for hours back to the mountain lodge. As she drove through the dark roads, she often wondered whether she was trying to prove something to people who had already decided they would never see the truth. Her phone buzzed again. A private message from Ethan. "Good thing we found out early. That place is probably gone anyway, don't worry. If the family buys it, you'll still be able to come up and stay a few days every year." Olivia stared at the message for a long time. The family buys it, her house, and lets her visit. A strange feeling spread through her chest. Not anger, not hurt. Clarity. For the first time in years, she saw everything with terrifying precision. This family did not truly believe she was a failure. They needed her to be a failure. Because if Olivia succeeded, the entire story they had spent years telling about her would collapse. Olivia stood up. She walked into the study at the end of the hallway. In the corner of the room sat an old wooden chest. The last thing her grandfather had left behind before he passed away. She had never opened it, not because she wasn't curious, but because she believed the past should be allowed to rest. Today was different. While her family discussed how to divide the property they believed she was about to lose, an uneasy feeling settled over her. Olivia knelt beside the chest. Her hand touched the worn metal lock. The sound of metal echoed softly through the silent room. The lid opened slowly. Inside were stacks of documents yellowed by time. And resting on top of everything else was an envelope written in her grandfather's familiar handwriting, a letter she should have read 20 years ago. A letter that had the power to change everything the Carter family believed was true. Olivia did not sleep that night. The letter remained on her desk. The soft, yellow glow of the lamp spilled across the pages that had faded with age. Outside the window, snow continued to fall. Inside the room, time seemed to stand still. She stared at her grandfather's familiar handwriting. Then she slowly opened the letter. The very first sentence made her heart stop. If you are reading this letter, it means the family has begun fighting over something they never truly understood. Olivia kept reading, sentence by sentence, line by line. Her grandfather wrote about the final years of his life, about quietly observing everyone in the family, about the times Ethan only visited when he needed money, about the phone calls Diane always ended by asking how the estate would eventually be divided, about Melissa, who never failed to mention property values whenever she came by. Then Olivia reached a passage that forced her to read it twice. The mountain lodge is not part of the family estate. I transferred ownership to you many years ago. No one else has any claim to it. Olivia felt her breathing grow heavier. Beneath the letter was a thick stack of legal documents, transfer papers, trust records, ownership certificates. Everything was legitimate, everything had been notarized, and every document carried her name. The biggest surprise was not that she owned the lodge, it was the date. The transfer had taken place nearly 20 years earlier, which meant that during all that time, the family had no idea, or someone had deliberately made sure they never found out. Olivia continued sorting through the remaining documents. Another envelope appeared. Inside was a copy of an old will. Several pages had been marked in red ink. Some of the documents contained handwritten notes from her grandfather. One short sentence stood out immediately. If these documents ever disappear, look closely at the people who benefit the most. Olivia sat frozen. A cold sensation traveled down her spine. For the first time, she began questioning the stories her family had repeated for years. Maybe none of it had been accidental. Maybe certain secrets had been buried far deeper than she ever imagined. The next morning, while Olivia was making coffee, her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. She answered. A middle-aged man spoke on the other end. Good morning, Miss Carter. My name is Nathan Brooks from Mountain Ridge Bank. I need to verify some information regarding one of your properties. Olivia frowned slightly. My property? Yes. A man came to the bank this morning claiming he had authorization from the family to purchase your lodge at an upcoming auction. Olivia slowly set down her coffee cup. Her heartbeat quickened. What's his name? Nathan was silent for a moment. Ethan Carter. The air in the kitchen seemed to freeze. Olivia walked toward the window, looking down at the snow-covered valley below. What is he doing there? The bank manager let out a sigh. He brought a collection of documents. Some of them indicate that the property is in debt proceedings and preparing for a transfer of ownership, but several details didn't match. We reviewed the records and discovered that the original property files tell a completely different story. Olivia tightened her grip on the phone. Does he know the lodge belongs to me? I'm not sure, but if he does, the situation becomes much more serious. After the call ended, Olivia remained seated in silence. She thought about the messages from the night before, the excited discussions, the profit projections, the laughter. Not one of them had been thinking about helping her. They had only been thinking about owning what belonged to her. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was a message from Ethan. On my way to the bank. Looks like everything is going even better than expected. Olivia stared at the screen. Then she looked back at the documents spread across her desk. Her grandfather's letter still rested beside them, like a warning sent from the past. For years, she had been the one who gave in. The one who kept the peace. The one who accepted being dismissed in order to preserve something called family. But today was different. For the first time, she felt something shift inside her, not anger, a boundary, the final boundary. She opened her computer, scanned every document, sent copies to her attorney, sent copies to the bank. Then she wrote a brief email. I am the sole legal owner of this property. I have not authorized any individual to represent me or conduct transactions on my behalf. 10 minutes later, Nathan called back. His voice was completely different this time. More serious. More direct. Miss Carter, we have suspended the entire transaction, and I believe you should prepare yourself, because the documents your brother submitted show signs of forgery. Olivia slowly closed her eyes. Outside, the snow continued to fall beautifully. But somewhere below the mountain, the Carter family was still celebrating. They had no idea that the story they had believed for years was about to collapse completely. And this time, the truth would not be on their side. 3 days later, the Carter family sat around the same table for the first time without anyone in the mood to smile. The meeting was held at Olivia's attorney's office in Denver. The atmosphere was so heavy that even the hum of the air conditioner seemed loud. Ethan sat at the head of the table. Grace sat beside him. Diane and Richard were across from them. Melissa kept twisting the ring on her finger. No one knew exactly what was about to happen, but everyone could feel it. Something had slipped beyond anyone's control. Olivia entered last. She wore a simple dark blue suit. A black briefcase rested in her hand. The familiar exhaustion her family remembered was gone. So was the image of the woman who always tried to explain herself in hopes of being understood. For the first time, Olivia appeared as someone entirely different. Calm, composed, and no longer in need of anyone's approval. Attorney Jonathan Reed spoke first. "Thank you all for coming. Today we need to clarify several matters regarding the property known as Pine Valley Lodge." Ethan immediately leaned forward. "I think this whole thing is being blown out of proportion. If mistakes were made, they were misunderstandings." Jonathan looked at him for several seconds. Then he placed a file on the table. Misunderstandings usually do not come with forged documents. The room instantly fell silent. Jonathan continued. "The bank has completed its preliminary investigation. The documents used to claim that the property was in debt proceedings were fraudulent. Certain information had been altered. Several signatures do not exist in the original records." Ethan immediately turned toward Olivia. "Do you really want to do this to your family?" Olivia said nothing. She simply looked at him. Her calm expression made Ethan visibly uncomfortable. Jonathan reached for another file, but that was not the most important part. He opened the folder, then carefully removed an old letter. The handwriting had faded with time. This letter was written by William Carter, Olivia's grandfather. Diane immediately looked up. Melissa's face lost all color. Jonathan began reading. "If my family is arguing over this property, then the thing I feared most has finally happened. I left Pine Valley Lodge to Olivia for one very simple reason. She was the only person who visited me without wanting something from me. The air in the room seemed to freeze." Olivia lowered her eyes. Old memories surfaced one after another. Winter drives through snow-covered roads to bring groceries to her grandfather. Long afternoons repairing broken fences together. Countless hours sitting beside him, listening to stories from his past. No one else came. Not Ethan. Not Melissa. Not anyone. Jonathan continued reading. "For years I watched everyone carefully, and I learned something important. They loved the value of property more than the people who owned it. That is why I transferred ownership to Olivia long before my death. I wanted to ensure that no one could pressure her or manipulate her after I was gone." Melissa suddenly jumped to her feet. "This is ridiculous. Nobody even knew those documents existed." Jonathan looked directly at her. "That is exactly what raises questions. How did certain documents disappear from the family records for so many years?" Melissa's face turned pale. Diane began breathing heavily. Richard lowered his head. Everyone understood what was being implied, but nobody dared to say it out loud. At that moment, Jonathan opened the investigation report. The latest findings from the authorities show email exchanges between Ethan and Grace before this incident occurred. The messages discuss converting the lodge into a luxury rental property. Projected annual revenue exceeds $500,000. Grace immediately turned toward Ethan. "You told me those emails had been deleted." The words escaped before she could stop them. The entire room went silent. Grace instantly realized her mistake. Too late. Jonathan closed the file. "Thank you. That clarifies quite a few things." Ethan slammed his hand against the table. "Fine. Yes, I wanted that property. But who wouldn't? Olivia has never used its full value anyway." For the first time, Olivia laughed. It was a small laugh, a bitter one. At last, the truth had arrived. Not because someone accidentally made a mistake, not because there had been a misunderstanding, but because they genuinely believed that anything belonging to her would be more valuable in their hands. Diane began crying. "I just wanted the family to stay together." Olivia looked at her mother. For years she had waited for an apology, a word of recognition, a single sentence acknowledging that her efforts had mattered. But in that moment, she realized she no longer needed any of it. What frightened everyone was not the possibility of losing the lodge. It was the collapse of the story they had spent years telling about Olivia. The woman they called a failure, the woman they pitied, the woman they dismissed, was actually the most successful person in the family, and for the first time, no one could deny it. Just then, Jonathan's phone vibrated. He read the message, then slowly looked up. His expression turned serious. The investigation team has sent their final report. They have confirmed that the forged documents were created intentionally. The case is now moving forward for possible prosecution. No one spoke, because everyone understood. The real storm had only just begun. 12 weeks later, winter had passed. The snow covering the slopes of Pine Valley had begun to melt. Small streams of water wound their way through the rocks. The pine forests slowly regained their deep green color. Life moved on, but life for the Carter family would never be the same again. Olivia stood on the second-floor balcony. A cup of hot coffee rested in her hands. Morning sunlight stretched across the distant mountain peaks. The scene was so peaceful that no one would have guessed this place had been the center of a family war only a few months earlier. Her phone vibrated softly on the table. A new email appeared. Olivia opened it. It was a notification from the National Environmental Architecture Council. After multiple rounds of review, her mountain ecosystem restoration project had officially been selected as a national research model. The grant would continue for years. The kind of opportunity thousands of professionals in her field dreamed about. Olivia finished reading, smiled, then set the phone down. There was no one left to call. No one left to share the good news with. And strangely enough, this time she did not feel sad. Elsewhere, Ethan was not enjoying the same peace. After the case had ended, the investigation records became public information. He avoided prison, but the consequences were still severe. The company where Ethan worked launched an internal review. Only a few weeks later, his employment was terminated. Not because of the legal outcome, but because trust had been lost. Clients who had once worked with him began pulling away. Friends who used to appear at weekend gatherings gradually disappeared. The greatest thing Ethan lost was not money, it was the image he had spent years building. Grace did not fare any better. The luxury resort business she had once dreamed of creating collapsed completely. Investors withdrew one after another. Phone calls went unanswered. Doors that had once been open quietly closed. For the first time, both of them were forced to face a simple truth. Any success built on greed eventually falls apart. Melissa nearly vanished from family gatherings. The disappearance of old family documents had severely damaged her reputation. No one could prove she had intentionally hidden them. But no one believed it was merely a coincidence anymore. As for Diane and Richard, they seemed to age years within a matter of months. Not because of the investigation, but because for the first time in their lives, they were forced to examine themselves honestly. One afternoon near the end of spring, Diane unexpectedly arrived at Pine Valley Lodge. Olivia saw the familiar car through the window. She stood silently for a few seconds, then walked outside. The woman standing before her looked much smaller than she remembered. The familiar confidence was gone. The certainty that she was always right had disappeared. Only exhaustion remained. The two women stood facing each other for a long time. Finally, Diane spoke. "I don't understand how everything ended up like this." Olivia looked at her. For a very long time. Then quietly asked, "Do you really not understand?" Diane lowered her head. She did not answer. Olivia continued. "For years. Every time Ethan succeeded, the family celebrated. Every time I achieved something, someone found a way to make it seem smaller. No one ever took success away from Ethan, but everyone tried to take the value out of mine." Tears began rolling down Diane's face. "I never meant to." Olivia nodded gently. "I know. That's what makes it even sadder. Because the deepest wounds do not always come from cruelty. Sometimes they come from favoritism that lasts so long people stop recognizing it." Diane broke down crying. For the first time in many years, she did not defend herself. She did not blame anyone else. She did not search for excuses. But it was too late. Some bridges collapse in ways that can never be rebuilt. Before leaving, Diane asked one final question. Do you forgive the family? Olivia looked toward the mountains in the distance. The setting sun painted the valley gold. She thought for a few seconds, then smiled softly. I forgave them a long time ago. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. Diane stood motionless. She said nothing more. The car slowly disappeared down the mountain road. Olivia watched until it vanished behind the line of pine trees. That evening, she returned to her office, opened the final drawer of her desk. Inside were the old files, the letters, the documents, the memories that had changed her life forever. Olivia looked at them for a while, then gently closed the drawer. For a long time, she had tried to prove her worth to her family. She had hoped that one day they would finally see who she truly was. But now she understood. Self-worth is not something that requires another person's approval. It exists whether anyone recognizes it or not. Outside the window, the sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains. The final light of the day covered Pine Valley Lodge in a warm golden glow. A place that had once been the target of greed now stood as a symbol of freedom. Her phone vibrated once again. A new message appeared in the family group chat. Olivia looked at the notification for a few seconds, then deleted it without opening it, not because of anger, not because of resentment, but because for the first time in her life, she no longer needed to know what they thought. And in that moment, Olivia Carter finally understood. The greatest inheritance her grandfather had left behind was not the mountain lodge. It was the opportunity to learn how to live for herself. At last, completely, and forever. Before you go, take a moment to think about Olivia's journey. Sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from strangers, they come from the people we trust the most. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving others wrong, it's finally finding peace without their approval. What would you have done if you were in Olivia's place? Would you have forgiven your family? Or walked away for good? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful family drama story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.